You're not lazy. You're just tired of trying to be good. The kind of good that keeps everyone happy. The kind of good that never says no. The kind of good that smiles when it wants to scream. If you've spent your life trying to make others comfortable, if rest makes you feel guilty, if you feel broken when you can't keep it all together, you might be carrying a wound. Not from a cruel mother, but from a mother who was overwhelmed. She may not have shouted. She may not have hit you. She may have loved you deeply, but her exhaustion became your burden. And you learned, quietly, to disappear so she could breathe. Carl Jung said, "What remains unconscious will rule our lives, and for many, the mother's pain lives on through overfunctioning, perfectionism, and self-doubt." This video isn't about blaming her, it's about seeing clearly. Together, we'll trace how emotional over-responsibility forms in childhood, how it hides behind achievement and kindness, and how we can begin to let it go. Because the truth is, you were never meant to carry her pain. But when the need to be good becomes a lifelong performance, we begin to forget who we are underneath the applause. What started as a quiet survival instinct in childhood, a way to feel loved, safe, or useful, can become a blueprint for how we show up in every relationship. And nowhere is this more evident than in the life of the good daughter, the one who never complains, never rests, and never feels enough. She's the one everyone depends on. She remembers birthdays, smooths over family tension, says yes even when her body says no. She holds it all, quietly, gracefully, endlessly, until something breaks. And when it does, she doesn't blame anyone. She just assumes it's her fault. The good daughter is often praised for being responsible, caring, selfless. But behind that praise is a deep, aching confusion. Why, after doing everything right, does she still feel like she's somehow wrong? This isn't just about behavior, it's about identity. Somewhere in her early life, she learned that love had conditions. Be helpful. Don't complain. Don't need too much. Her mother may have been overwhelmed, emotionally unavailable, or simply too caught in her own wounds to be fully present. So the child became small, quiet, attuned. She sensed moods before they were spoken. She adjusted, anticipated, absorbed. And this emotional vigilance became her superpower and her prison. And even in adulthood, she may continue to overfunction, taking on too much at work, holding space for everyone else's emotions, and secretly believing that if she ever stopped trying, everything would fall apart. But no one sees the weight she carries. They only see the smile, the helpfulness, the one who has it all together. And so, she walks through life feeling unseen, not because people ignore her, but because they only see the version of her that survives, not the one that's quietly falling apart. What's most painful is that she doesn't know this pattern began as protection. She just thinks she's broken, too sensitive, too needy, too much, or never enough. She mistakes survival strategies for flaws in her character. Carl Jung spoke of the persona, the mask we wear to navigate the world. For the good daughter, that mask becomes fused to her skin, and underneath it lies a terrified child who just wanted to be seen without having to earn it. But there's hope here, because what was learned can be unlearned, and the first step is naming what this is. Not weakness, not failure, but a wound. A very old, very quiet wound that was never yours to carry in the first place. But a wound doesn't form in isolation. Behind every over-functioning daughter is often a mother who was herself, barely staying afloat. A woman carrying the weight of generations, trying to hold it all together while no one asked how she was really doing. To understand the good daughter, we must first turn toward the exhausted mother. She didn't mean to pass down her pain. She didn't try to make her child feel responsible for her sadness. But exhaustion has a language, and children become fluent in it long before they learn to speak. A burned-out mother doesn't have to say much. Her silence speaks. The sighs at the end of the day, the tension behind her smile, the faraway look in her eyes. They all tell a story. And the child, sensitive and eager to connect, hears it. She may not understand it, but she feels it. And slowly, she begins to believe. If I were easier, quieter, better, maybe she'd be okay. This is how emotional over-responsibility begins, not through cruelty, but through quiet, unspoken expectations. Don't cry. Don't need too much. Be good, so I can breathe. The mother may have grown up in survival mode herself. She was never given space to fall apart. So by the time she becomes a parent, there's no room left for softness, only function. When her child shows neediness or emotion, it stirs something in her she doesn't know how to hold, so she withdraws. Not from lack of love, but from overload. The child sees this not as a reflection of the mother's inner world, but as a reflection of her own worth, so she tries harder, suppresses her feelings, becomes the balm instead of the burden. And this strategy becomes her identity. What's most tragic? She thinks it's strength. She thinks it means she's mature. But deep down, love feels heavy, conditional, exhausting. Carl Jung reminds us that what remains unconscious gets passed down, generation to generation. A mother who never learned to rest cannot teach her daughter how to stop striving. And so, the cycle repeats, not out of malice, but memory. The daughter grows up measuring her worth by how useful she is. She seeks out people and roles where she has to earn her place, because that's how she first learned love. But at some point, when her body breaks down or a quiet grief settles in, she asks, "What if I was never supposed to carry all this?" That question is terrifying and freeing. It threatens the role she's known all her life, but it also cracks open something true. Healing doesn't mean turning against her mother. It means turning toward herself. It means seeing clearly, yes, her mother struggled, yes, the love was real. And no, none of it was ever the child's responsibility. When we carry what was never ours to begin with, we don't just inherit memories. We inherit shadows, invisible forces that shape how we love, how we fear, how we see ourselves. And no one understood these hidden inheritances more deeply than Carl Jung. To move forward, we must turn inward, into the shadow of the mother. Carl Jung believed that every human psyche is shaped not just by what is seen, but by what is hidden. He called it the shadow, the parts of ourselves we reject, suppress, or never fully meet. When we think of a mother, we often picture love, comfort, safety. But Jung invites us to look deeper, into the darker, unspoken aspects of the maternal archetype, not to blame, but to understand. The mother wound lives not only in the actions she took, but in the parts of herself she could never bring into the light. Her sorrow, her rage, her fear of not being enough. If she could not face these emotions, they didn't disappear. They were passed on, quietly, through tone, silence, gesture, tension. The daughter, tuned in and tender, absorbed it all. Jung wrote that what is not made conscious will be lived out as fate. And so the daughter begins to live out what the mother could not. She becomes accommodating, alert, afraid to disappoint. She carries the shadow not because she chose to, but because no one else would. The maternal shadow doesn't always look like abuse. It often looks like pressure, like perfection, like a mother who gives everything but never rests, teaching her daughter, without words, that love is labor. or it looks like silence. A mother who never cries, never asks for help, never shows vulnerability, leaving the daughter unsure if she's even allowed to have needs at all. The child grows up not just in the light of her mother's love, but in the weight of her mother's denial. And in that weight, she learns to disappear, to become easy, to make herself small, because somewhere in her nervous system, she believes her existence is too much. This is the shadow, not evil, not intentional, just unconscious pain, passed down until someone finally names it. And this is the gift of Jung's work, the reminder that healing doesn't begin by fixing, but by seeing. To name the shadow is to reclaim choice. It's to realize that her mother's silence was not a reflection of her worth, but of her mother's own wounds. It's to begin separating her identity from the survival patterns she inherited. This doesn't mean abandoning the mother. It means releasing the illusion that being loyal to her pain is the same as loving her. True love, mature, conscious love, includes space for truth. And truth, even when uncomfortable, is what sets both generations free. But how do we know if we're still living under her shadow? If the wound is invisible, passed through gestures, glances, and silence, how do we begin to see its shape? We start by noticing what hurts, not the loud pain, but the subtle ones, the habits that drain us, the guilt that never leaves, the joy that feels foreign. The hidden mother wound doesn't always announce itself with dramatic stories. Sometimes, it lingers in the quietest parts of our day. The hesitation before speaking up, the guilt after saying no, the exhaustion that comes not from doing too much, but from never feeling like it's enough. It shows up in the way we over-explain ourselves, apologize for existing, or flinch at the thought of rest, not because we're doing something wrong, but because deep down, we're afraid that slowing down makes us unworthy. You might notice it in your relationships. You always listen, always show up, always hold space. But when you need support, you pull away, withdraw, minimize your pain. You tell yourself you're too much. You fear being a burden. You might hear it in your inner voice, the one that whispers, "You should have done more. You're being selfish." Don't make them uncomfortable. That voice isn't yours. It's inherited. A script passed down unconsciously, born from a childhood where emotional safety was earned, not given. Many of us grew up in homes where love was present, but space for emotional complexity was not. Mothers who loved deeply, but were stretched thin, overwhelmed, emotionally unavailable, taught us that our needs were inconvenient, not directly, but through sighs, glances, the change in her tone when we cried too long or asked for too much. So we learned to self-abandon, to become pleasant, predictable, perfect, and perfection became our shield against rejection, against shame, against the fear that if we're not useful, we're not lovable. But the cost is quiet and corrosive. You go through life overgiving, and yet feel unseen. You achieve, and still feel hollow. You surround yourself with people, but rarely feel safe enough to fully unfold. Even joy feels foreign, like it belongs to someone else, like you have to earn it, or explain it, or wait until everyone else has had theirs before you can taste yours. And the wound deepens, because no matter how much you do, you carry a low, constant hum of guilt. Guilt for resting, guilt for saying no, guilt for wanting more. This is the hidden mother wound, not because she failed, not because she didn't love you, but because love, in your home, came with conditions. To start healing, we first acknowledge what was missing, not to blame her, but to validate ourselves. Because without that validation, we stay trapped in confusion. We keep asking, why do I feel this way? Why can't I relax? Why does love feel so complicated? The answers don't come from analyzing others. They come from witnessing ourselves. So if you resonate with this, if you recognize the weight of these patterns, know that you're not weak, you're not broken. You're just living with an old imprint that was never truly yours to begin with. And naming that imprint is the first crack in the wall, the first thread that can be pulled loose, the first breath that doesn't carry guilt. Because once you see the wound, you can stop being it. Awareness is not the end, it's the invitation. Once we've seen the wound, we face a new question. What now? Healing doesn't happen in a single moment. It unfolds slowly, through boundaries, honesty, and permission to rest. And it begins the moment we stop proving our worth and start reclaiming our space. Letting go sounds simple, but for the over-responsible daughter, it feels like betrayal. She was trained, not through harsh words, but through unspoken rhythms, that love is maintained by self-sacrifice, that if someone is disappointed, it must be her fault, that saying no means she's ungrateful, selfish, or unkind. So when she begins to heal, when she starts drawing boundaries, resting without guilt, or speaking truths she once buried, it feels terrifying. Not because she's doing something wrong, but because she's doing something new. Boundaries, at their core, are not walls. They're clarity. They say, this is what I can give without losing myself. This is where I end and you begin. And for a woman who's been trained to blur her edges, even the act of recognizing her own needs can feel like rebellion. But it's not rebellion, it's restoration. Letting go doesn't mean rejecting the mother. It means releasing the unconscious contract. I'll stay small so you can feel safe. I'll carry the silence so no one has to feel pain. That contract was never fair, and it was never sustainable. To begin the healing process, you don't need to confront anyone. You don't need to have a perfect conversation. You don't even need your mother to understand. You only need to begin witnessing yourself honestly, gently, consistently. When you feel guilty for saying no, pause and ask, whose discomfort am I carrying? When you feel the urge to fix, to help, to smooth everything over, pause and ask, is this mine to hold? You'll be surprised by how often the answer is no. No, it's not your job to manage everyone's emotions. No, it's not your job to stay silent to keep the peace. No, it's not your job to shrink. This is not about becoming hard. It's about becoming whole. Wholeness allows for contradiction. You can love your mother and still name what hurt. You can feel compassion for her struggle and still refuse to carry it. Carl Jung believed that healing required integration, bringing the unconscious into the light. And that's what boundaries do. They shine a light on where you've disappeared and give you a map to return. And when you begin returning, you'll notice small shifts. You'll breathe deeper. You'll stop over-explaining. You'll feel discomfort and not rush to fix it. You'll realize your worth isn't in what you produce, but in who you are when you're still, when you're quiet, when you're finally home to yourself. Some days will feel heavy. You'll want to fall back into old patterns. That's okay. Healing is not linear. But every time you choose yourself, even in the smallest ways, you rewrite the story. You remind the scared little girl inside you that she doesn't have to earn love anymore, that she was always worthy, that now, finally, someone is listening to her, and that someone is you. Healing the mother wound isn't about reaching a perfect state. It's about softening into truth. It's about returning to yourself, not the version shaped by duty or guilt, but the one who existed long before you learned to be good. And that return can be the most powerful act of love you ever offer to yourself. If this video spoke to something quiet inside you, something you've carried without words, know that you're not alone. Take a deep breath, and when you're ready, share this with someone else who might need it too. And if you'd like to walk this journey together, subscribe to the channel. Tap the bell so you'll know when the next chapter arrives. You don't have to heal alone. We're building something slow, honest, and real, one reflection at a time.